This is the first photograph of the surface of Venus, and it's quite possible that life could have once existed there. And there might have even been some intelligent beings. In this video, I'll tell you why humans will never inhabit Venus, what conditions are like there, and how they came to be. And at the end of the video, you'll learn the most amazing facts about this planet. Enjoy watching. Did you know that Venus is called Earth's sister? You'll be shocked, but many parameters of these planets are incredibly similar. Their sizes, masses, and even densities hardly differ at all. Moreover, the very first photograph from the surface of another planet was taken on Venus. So does this mean that humans will soon be colonizing a new celestial body? It's not as simple as it may seem at first glance.
No.
Initially, I also wondered why Elon Musk wants to conquer Mars if there's a more convenient option, Venus. As it turns out, apart from similar size, mass, and density, there's no resemblance to Earth. The thing is, the atmosphere of this planet is filled with clouds of carbon dioxide and sulfuric acid. Naturally, under such conditions, no human could survive. Also, the surface temperature is simply immense. It reaches 932 degrees Fahrenheit. You might logically ask, then why was the first photograph from another planet taken on this planet? Here, it's worth noting the time when it was taken. It was in the early 1970s, during the active space race between the USSR and the USA. During those times, literally all celestial bodies were under the scrutiny of scientists, and Venus simply became one of the most convenient places for exploration, since it was closest to Earth. By the way, the history of this very photograph is extremely interesting.
Wow!
The USSR had its own separate program for studying Venus. It developed quite extensively. So, between the first launch of an interplanetary station and the first photograph, 14 whole years passed. The first spacecraft sent to the planet was named Venera 1. Unfortunately, all communication with it was completely lost. So now, somewhere in space, there is a heap of metal with scientific equipment on board. After that, the Soviet Union improved its interplanetary stations. So, a couple of years later, one of the spacecraft finally managed to fly past the planet and collect scientific data. However, the data collected with each mission increasingly surprised scientists. For example, before the launch of the fourth spacecraft, it was believed that the pressure on the planet did not exceed 10 atmospheres. This is comparable to diving to a depth of 320 feet. Needless to say, how horrendous these conditions are. But as it turned out later, the pressure there was close to 100. And it was precisely the fourth research spacecraft that made scientists realize that conquering this planet would not be easy, because it was literally crushed. Other spacecraft studied the chemical composition of the planet, and the 8th interplanetary station even reached the surface of Venus and took soil samples. And finally, after 14 years of studying this planet, on October 22, 1975, the 9th scientific apparatus with a camera on board managed to reach the surface of the planet and take black and white photos. And it's worth noting that all the efforts of the scientists were not in vain. The apparatus maintained communication for a whole 53 minutes. By the way, I forgot to mention, when Venera 7, the spacecraft that first landed on Venus, was landing, it had its own parachute. At that time, scientists did not know that there were acidic sulfur clouds on the planet. And these simply ate away at that parachute. That's how cruel this planet is. But the fact that there is sulfuric acid and carbon dioxide on the planet indicates that there is water there. And as we know, water is one of the most important parameters for life, at least in forms we understand. Where did it come from? No one can say for sure, but there is one undeniable fact. The planet has very active volcanic activity. It's quite possible that once there were seas and oceans on the planet. But a real apocalypse happened, causing all the water to evaporate or turn into sulfuric acid. These are just my guesses, but what if there was a full-fledged life there? What if there were beings as highly developed as us? And you know, the idea sounds quite realistic. Venus happens to be in the so-called habitable zone. That is, the distance from the Sun is not so close that it's too hot there, and not too far that it's too cold. So, maybe there were extraterrestrials living there who themselves destroyed their planet. War, or maybe global warming, which caused an increase in volcanic activity. And they, in turn, spoiled the atmosphere and destroyed all life. By the way, some experts also talk about such a scenario regarding Earth. What do you think? Was there life there? Alright, I'll leave my speculations aside for now. After all, I found some really interesting facts about Venus. For example, did you know that the gravity on the planet is about 90% of Earth's? This is precisely because Venus is almost the same size as Earth, and there are real hurricanes there, although it's almost impossible to survive in their center. The wind speed there reaches an astonishing 430 miles per hour. But what personally amazes me much more is the fact that a year on this planet is shorter than a day. Yes, you heard that right. Venus completes a full orbit around the Sun in 224 Earth days. But during that time, the Sun shines for 243 days on the surface. This happens roughly due to the same reason why polar days and nights exist on Earth. And Venus is also the hottest planet in the solar system. Because of this, it shines very brightly. So much so that on Earth, on a clear and moonless night, you can easily see shadows from objects. By the way, about my theory, it's precisely the greenhouse effect from the carbon dioxide and hydrogen emitted by volcanoes that caused such intense heating of the planet. All the water simply evaporated due to the high temperature. And there are about 1,600 volcanoes on the planet constantly erupting. By the way, on Earth, there are about 4,000 of them. It's scary to imagine what would happen if all of them woke up. Scientists have also proven that some amino acids can withstand the terrible acidic conditions of Venus. If you didn't know, these are the building blocks of our bodies. All the proteins in the body consists of them, and essentially, without amino acids, there would be no life. And this fact is really striking, because if not for the immense pressure, greenhouse effect, and consequently the enormous temperature, life could have existed on Venus. Even the acidity of the environment wouldn't have destroyed all life. Some organisms could have adapted. But in the conditions that currently prevail on the planet, no known living organism, including bacteria, could survive on Venus. Naturally, all these horrifying conditions that persist on the planet impose their own special limitations. Temperature and high pressure are the main problems for scientists. Because of this, people can hardly study the surface of the planet in detail. All spacecraft quickly malfunction, and if they were constructed from lead, they would simply melt. So how do scientists make new discoveries about this planet? They simply study it from the air. Literally. And I'm amazed at the methods they use to do it. The thing is, in the planet's atmosphere, there's a certain layer where scientists' equipment can still receive relevant data and where it doesn't malfunction. And essentially, the equipment flies there on ordinary balloons. Though the altitude there is still huge, about 25 miles above the surface. What kind of equipment do they place there? Of course, everything that can function from the air. For example, a seismograph. You might ask, how's that possible, since it should be placed on solid ground to detect any vibrations? Actually, it's not necessary. On Earth, it's needed because there are many living objects that themselves create seismic activity. And the air here is not as dense as on Venus. So scientists simply learn about surface vibrations from the sound that is transmitted through the air. Personally, I would be interested to hear what Venus sounds like. How about you? At such a height, at least some parts of the surface are visible, and that means you can take full-fledged photos of the planet. This is what scientists from the USA have been doing. In 1989, they sent their spacecraft to Venus, and it was able to take detailed pictures of the entire surface from the air. Personally, I'm sad that it's almost impossible to study the surface of the planet in detail. After all, the spacecraft that landed on this interesting planet only took small soil samples. Naturally, they are not enough for a comprehensive study of the planet. For example, it's impossible to probe and study the depths of the planet, so scientists still don't know what it's made of.
I don't know.
For instance, it would be possible to obtain data about the planet's core. or find out what layers this planet has. Maybe its structure would be similar to Earth's, and besides the solid surface, there would be liquid magma. In any case, such a great resemblance to Earth leads to certain thoughts. I'm also very interested in conducting some excavations of the surface of Venus. Just imagine what we can find there. After all, remnants of possible living beings may still remain in the depths, or signs of their activity. For example, on Earth, there's oil. And what is oil? These are exactly all those animals and plants that existed in the time of the dinosaurs. It's just that back then, many organisms died, gradually began to decompose, and were buried underground. And then, millions of years later, the dinosaurs turned into thick black liquid from which people make a bunch of useful things. The same thing could be found on Venus. It's also curious to study all the craters on this interesting planet. The thing is, fragments of meteorites often remain on them, which themselves carry interesting data and may contain some signs of life. But I would like to talk separately about the relief. The thing is, there are the same mountains, valleys, and even real rivers, though they are formed not by water but by lava. And the mountains there can be really huge. For example, there is a full-fledged mountain range on the planet which was named after the British physicist James Maxwell, and the height of the highest point of the planet is approximately 7 miles above the average level of Venus. Just imagine, the height there is so immense that the atmospheric pressure and temperature are half of what they are at normal altitudes. This place is considered the coldest on the planet, though still not suitable for the life of any organisms. Moreover, the weather there is quite unpleasant. Although, if you like rain, you would enjoy it there.
Yes! 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 Yes!
If only it wasn't made of sulfuric acid, which would literally dissolve you alive.
No! No! No!
After all, it constantly rains on Venus, and even thunderstorms. They, by the way, occur many times more frequently than on our planet. And such weather arises precisely because of the terrible conditions. The air in the upper layers of the atmosphere moves faster than the planet itself rotates on its axis. This leads to constant thunderstorms and other terrible weather phenomena. But personally, what frightens me is how the surface of Venus looks. The thing is, it's essentially a real hell. Literally, the entire surface consists of lava. It's from this that all those mountains and other geological features of the planet are made. And it cools down very slowly because of the high temperature. It will take millions of years for the liquid rock to turn into solid stone. By the way, I already mentioned that there are lava rivers on the planet. And yes, they are simply enormous. Scientists' radars, which are placed on scientific stations, show that there are rivers on the planet that consist entirely of lava, stretching for thousands of miles. Moreover, there are no lithospheric plates on the planet, so any earthquakes are most likely eruptions of new volcanoes. And again, it's because there's no water on the planet, and the lava is too dense for tectonic plates to appear. And the last fact that I found specifically for you amazes me. There is a rating that compares planets to Earth, and based on a variety of data, scientists draw conclusions about the similarity of the chosen object to our planet. So, according to this rating, Venus is much more suitable for humans than Mars, which scientists are planning to explore. But this parameter actually means nothing. Why? Because basic characteristics such as size, mass, and so on are compared there. So Venus has approximately 78% similarity to Earth, and Mars in turn only 64%. By the way, in one of the previous videos, I talked about planets that potentially could be suitable for us to live on. Some of them may even have living organisms, but what shocked me the most is that scientists found a celestial body that is 95% similar to our Earth. In general, I strongly advise you to watch that video. And finally, I would like to share the last couple of interesting facts about Venus. For example, it's one of the 2 planets that rotates clockwise around its axis. The rest of the bodies in the solar system rotate in the opposite direction. And Venus also has no satellites. In the 19th century, scientists believed that Mercury was once a moon of this planet, but they couldn't prove it. Today, I've told you the most interesting facts about Venus. Which moments and theories from this video did you like the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. And thanks for watching.